Hey babes, welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be talking about the best natural remedies for fibroids. And if you're new around here, I'm Shantae and I share my journey with fibroids and I give lifestyle tips and wellness tips for better hormone health and healing from fibroids. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Before I go into these remedies, I want to be fully transparent about this video and tell you that these are probably things that you've already heard about before, especially if you've been researching remedies for fibroids for a little bit. But what I really want to do in this video is break all of these remedies down, let you know which ones I think are effective, why I think they're effective, and how to do them or use them properly. I also need to give a disclaimer that this video is not to replace any medical advice. I'm simply sharing my experience or what works in my experience, what I've tried in my experience, and this video is for educational purposes only. And also, if you see me glancing over, it's because I have some notes up on a little screen over here, just so that I don't miss anything. Now, it's my personal opinion that just doing one or two of these natural remedies is probably not going to do much for fibroids. However, if you do maybe one or two of them and even incorporate those lifestyle changes, the foundational lifestyle changes you need to make, that is what's going to really set you up for success. And when I say foundational lifestyle habits, what I'm talking about is changing your diet, getting more sleep, getting more movement in, and also reducing and managing stress. So let's jump into these natural remedies for fibroids. The first one is a pretty popular one and it's green tea. Now, before you go buy tons of cups or tons of pounds of green tea and start drinking it every day, my suggestion for this one would be to use an actual green tea extract supplement. And the reason for this is because in the studies that were done on green tea extract, they actually used a supplement and they gave a therapeutic dose, which was 800 milligrams. And so I would imagine that you want to at least be getting that much. Now, I've seen some green tea extract supplements that are more or less. I would suggest just starting with what they mention in the study. And I will link any studies that I mentioned down in the description box so that you can look at them yourselves. But for the green tea extract in particular, green tea, or the compound in green tea, ECGC, has been shown to inhibit tumor growth, and it's also a strong antioxidant. So that is why it's believed to help with fibroid growth, or to help inhibit or stop or even shrink fibroids. Now, this next remedy I don't hear a lot of people talking about anymore. When I was new on my journey, I heard several people mentioning blackstrap molasses, but now I don't hear as many people talking about blackstrap molasses anymore, or maybe it's just my algorithm. But blackstrap molasses is actually used by a lot of people for anemia, so that might be why it's not necessarily mentioned as much for fibroids, but it is a type of sugar, and the way that it's made, it actually retains a lot of the nutrients. So a lot of the times when you're eating white sugar, that's processed down, it's been stripped of any nutrients. But blackstrap molasses is different in that it retains its nutrients. So it's really rich in iron. I want to say you can get about 30% of your daily value of iron from a serving of blackstrap molasses. So that's one of the reasons why it's a more popular remedy for anemia. Some other nutrients that are in blackstrap molasses are B vitamins, calcium, and potassium, all of which are going to help with hormone regulation and hormone production. Now, I haven't found any studies or anything to suggest that blackstrap molasses will help in shrinking fibroids. However, I have heard people say that it does. I actually met someone who told me the story about how they shrank their fibroids, and that is actually what she used. Now, I will say this person is very healthy, works out, eats really well, but she told me that she took the blackstrap molasses in some warm water every single day for a month before she went to go have an ultrasound, and the fibroid was gone. So there are some anecdotal stories out there of blackstrap molasses working for fibroids, but I do know that it is more so helpful for the fibroid symptoms. Another remedy that I've talked about myself is castor oil packs. And I even have a whole video on how I do castor oil packs. If you're not familiar with castor oil, it's an oil from like a kind of like a bean looking plant. And the fatty acids in this oil are known to be able to penetrate the skin more deeply so that they actually may reach the underneath the skin and even organs underneath. And the fatty acids are also detoxifying and anti-inflammatory. So a lot of women, including myself, use castor oil on their wound. And a lot of times I'll use a heat source, like one of those, kind of like a heating pad, like one of those rice field heating pads, and I will put it over the castor oil pack. Sometimes I'll do it on my abdomen, on my lower abdomen, or on my liver. It just depends on what part of the cycle I'm in. And again, I go a lot more in detail in that video, and I'll be sure to link that here. But castor oil can be helpful for breaking up scar tissue. If you're someone like myself who has had a C-section, it can be helpful for endometriosis pain and breaking up the tissue from endometriosis pain. And it can also be helpful for detoxification and breaking up stagnation. One of the most important things, in my opinion, about doing castor oil packs is making sure that you get a castor oil that is high quality and that's also in a glass bottle. I can link a couple of brands in the description that I found. But the reason this is important is you don't want an oil that's been cut with something else, because that defeats the point, and it's going to reduce the potency of your castor oil. You want to make sure that wherever you get your castor oil, it has been thoughtfully and carefully sourced, so to make sure that it's at its best level of potency. Also, you want to make sure that it is in a glass container or glass bottle. And I prefer a glass container or glass bottle because of microplastics or plastics which can mimic estrogen. So I just don't think it's a good idea to use something that you are trying to use for healing that's been kept in plastic. And another tip for using castor oil packs is always use unbleached cotton. And that, again, is going to help you avoid some unnecessary chemicals, especially if you're like me and you like to do it with heat. Next on my list is turmeric, and specifically the compound that's found in turmeric, which is curcumin. Did I say that? I hope I said that right. Curcumin is a compound that has also been shown to not only reduce inflammation, but also to inhibit tumor growth. I think there are several studies on turmeric and fibroids, and that it has been shown to shrink fibroids. What you want to look for when you're looking for turmeric is, of course, you can use fresh turmeric and juice it. You just want to be careful about making sure you are getting organic. And another tip that I would add to that is to make sure that you use a little black pepper with it, or consume it with black pepper. So one of the ways that I like to get more turmeric in my diet is through soups and stews and curries, because I'm automatically going to add some black pepper. Now, if you have digestive issues, you might not do well with black pepper, and it's okay if you have to have turmeric by itself. Another thing that you can do is simply buy a supplement, and a lot of times you can find supplements that are paired with black pepper. Just be careful about using turmeric if you're on any blood thinners or can't be on blood thinners, because turmeric or curcumin is a blood thinner. And last but not least is vitamin D. Now, this one is a little bit interesting, and I got some notes over here because I want to make sure I mention a few things about vitamin D and fibroids that I don't think I've mentioned in any of my other videos. There were actually a few different studies done on the link between vitamin D and fibroids. One of which was an actual study about using vitamin D therapeutically to shrink fibroids, which means the participants in this study were given vitamin D. But something that I need to point out about that study in particular, the participants in that study were only 10% African American. Therefore, it's kind of difficult to tell what part race may have played in that study and how vitamin D might work for us or it might not. Now, I've heard people talk about this with varying results. To be honest, a lot of people that I've heard talk about this haven't experienced improved symptoms, but not always fibroids that shrink. So that is something to keep in mind. But one thing that's important about using vitamin D for fibroids, this is where you really need to consult a healthcare professional. And I say that because you want to make sure that you want to make sure where your vitamin D levels are. So I don't ever suggest just going to buy a supplement and taking it, without a purpose and without knowing exactly what you need. So this is where I suggest going and actually getting your vitamin D levels tested. Low vitamin D has been linked to fibroid growth, which makes sense because, again, vitamin D is one of those things that is linked to lower inflammation and also better hormone regulation. So you do want to make sure that your vitamin D levels are at least normal before you try to use vitamin D therapeutically just to shrink fibroids, because who knows, getting your levels back up to normal might actually help with that fibroid growth. Another thing that I want to make sure I point out about using vitamin D or supplementing with vitamin D is that you'll want to also supplement with this cofactor, which is vitamin K. And nowadays you can find this combination in a lot of supplements. The one that I use is Ritual. They have a good ratio of vitamin D to vitamin K. And so you want to make sure that you're doing that as well, because if you're getting too much vitamin D without enough vitamin K, it can cause you to have other health problems. So again, that is something that you really want to consult a healthcare or wellness professional about. Another thing that I noticed about this study, at least the one that I read, is that I wasn't clear about what the amount was that the participants in this study were given. So that's something to keep in mind too. Again, if they were given this certain amount, were they already deficient, or did they have normal levels and they were given this certain amount? So those are all things that we need to think about as we are exploring the correlation between vitamin D and fibroids. I hope you found this video super helpful. Let me know in the comments if you've tried any of these remedies, and make sure to give this video a like so that it can reach other women who have fibroids and are looking for natural ways to combat them. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.